How can AI bridge a gap in traditional lesson planning? Hi, I am Sandra Weezer Matthews, and I'm here with Casey Wacker, and we are two educators who really care both about our learners' education and how AI is affecting that. And it is. And so we are on this journey to discover tools and processes and theories and practices all based around AI. And every week something new pops up that we tend to need to really work through, and that's what we're going to do. And we're based both in high school and college. We both have experiences both places, and we're just going to share with you a problem that Casey ran into just today.
Yes, so I would say today was evidence of the value of AI. I'll just start with that. So I am a high school teacher, and a part of our expectations is to follow what our administrators kind of expect of us in our classrooms. And so sometimes we don't get a lot of say in what we teach, and we do and we don't. I had no problem with the content that I was expected to teach because it's near and dear to my heart, and I have no problem talking about matters that are important to students, especially the youth in my room. Last week, my boss said, let's do a lesson in each of our classrooms on Indigenous Peoples Day. And I said, absolutely. I think that that's incredibly important, and I stand by our district's decision to do that. But then I looked at my calendar and I looked at what I had to get done for my week, and I'm starting to sort of sweat, and my heart is racing because I want to do the right thing.
Right. And have you had a lot of training?
No.
In a lot of diverse, doesn't matter if it's Indigenous people or whatever it might be, right? We early on in education have not had the kind of training that should have been there.
Exactly. And that's hard to admit. I don't want to say that I've been ill-trained, because I never want my professors who might watch this or anyone to think that they did me wrong. I just think that it's a gap in our teacher preparation and in education in general, that we don't empower teachers to talk about other cultures in a way that is uplifting and in a way that is representative of truly how our society has created space for especially Indigenous people, but for any marginalized group. And I really struggle with that, because I believe everyone matters and their voices matter and what they have to say matters. And yet I have a pocket of humans in my day-to-day that I know history has not been on their side, and I know that our education system hasn't supported them. And so now I'm given an opportunity in my classroom to say, let's do this right. And yet I have this much time to do it. And that little bit of time, it's hard. And I struggled with the weight of the topic and wanting to say my 155-minute lesson is good enough. And so as I thought about how I'm going to align Indigenous Peoples Day celebration and honoring and respect of traditions and customs, and what story will we get to hear in that 55 minutes, because I have to be selective. I can't talk about everything. I have to be the person who makes that decision, and that weighed heavily on me. But what I ultimately did is I looked at what were my classes. I have 3 different preps right now. So I looked at what are we doing right now? What are we talking about? And how do I see that aligning with, maybe some resources put out by MDE, our Department of Education, maybe some other sources that I have just in my classroom. I have some books, I have some literature that I could come back to. So I started to sort of look through that, and I came to, okay, public speaking class, we talk about storytelling, we talk about traditions in that way, you know, being authentic and sharing your experiences and how much that can help in the delivery of your speech to give you, you know, some relief as a speaker, but to also share with the audience something that can bring you together. So that's where I'm going to go, because storytelling is so ingrained and so much a part of Indigenous people's stories and lives. And I wanted to make sure I put that in there. The second thing is, my video production students are creating podcasts, much like what my colleague Sandra and I are doing. And so I wanted to make sure that I thought about, how do they see representation of Indigenous people in film and in video, and how can I draw on those experiences? And then in my college writing class, they're doing research. And so I wanted to think about, how can I tie in the research component to the class and yet still have them recognize that there's not a lot of rich resources about Indigenous cultures like there are others. And so I have all these things and I'm stressed.
But you started with what you are doing right now, where you are at right now. Then you thought about your learners and their assets and their identities and where they're at. And then you said, okay, so now I have this information, but the information I don't have, I'm going to reach out to AI.
Exactly. So
tell us the process that you did with that, and where did you reach out to?
So I started with what I know, which is ChatGPT. I basically poured my heart out into ChatGPT, and I said, this is what I want to do. This is the type of objective that I want to have for my students. I want, you know, the storytelling aspect, and I need to find some stories that we can get through in a short period of time. I want them to focus on theme and understand tone. And I said all of the things, and I just put it out there on ChatGPT, and now tell me what to do, or, you know, give me some way to organize all of this stuff, because that's the aligning to standards, aligning it to a step-by-step process. That's what I didn't have time for. I have my idea and I think it's okay and I think it's good. And ChatGPT helped. It was great, but I also felt like it wasn't as rich as I needed to be. I kept asking for additional prompting. You know, I kept saying, I need an example. I need to go further into this. Can you send me a link? And of course, ChatGPT struggles a little bit with that. They can tell me how to go and search, which I then used, and I was able to find some resources, but I also felt like I was wasting time that I could have been doing elsewhere. So I kind of jumped out of ChatGPT and I went to Brisk. So Brisk is a really great extension that I use for feedback, that I use for creating questions based on readings that I have, that I just need something a little bit quicker than me reading through and coming up with like 10 questions. So I'm like, how can I use Brisk? So Brisk has this really great service where you can align it to grade level and sort of a category, like, do you want a lesson plan, or do you want feedback, or do you want maybe an activity or an example or something. So I asked it to come up with a lesson plan, and I plugged in a lot of the things that I got as results from ChatGPT, and it created a very clean, very easy, very comprehensive lesson that I felt I could do, that I could use in my classroom.
It sounds similar to what we did our last show, which was Edu AI. So that was somewhat helpful because it kind of refined some of your choices and it got to be a much cleaner, quicker process. So then did you stop there?
I did not, because of course I can't stop there. So I did go to EduAid AI, and I did something very similar where I took the results of one AI tool, it sort of mashed it together with the results of another, plugged that in, and then I ended up finding, I think I did 3, 4, 5 different workspaces. You know how EduAid works, where you end up with your lessons and you can kind of add and take away, and I did that, and what I ended up doing in my classroom today was a combination of all of those things. I sat last night and looked at all of the results. I had about 20 or so, maybe lesson plans / assignments / takeaways. And I said, what does my human side say is the right thing to do? And that's
Right.
what I tested.
So when you look back, about how long was the process, even with reflection, when you did all the AI?
Okay, let's say when I started using ChatGPT to me making the decision last night and finalizing an assignment with Brisk again, I would say I probably spent at minimum on this 4 hours.
Right.
And now that is
it sounds like a lot.
But I also did this. I did this over starting last Monday to last night.
Right. And then just processing, reflecting, thinking, crafting.
Right.
But as we've said before, saving time. Do we have that time? And that's how you got into this spot where you said, what am I going to do? Right. How long would you have guessed 20 exercises to choose from would have taken you to have developed?
Weeks. I mean, and I'm not being facetious. I know how I work. I know how thorough I am. I know that I like to make sure things are aligned properly, that my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. I know this about me, and I know that it would have taken me a very long time. So to say that I spent 4 hours, and that's probably being generous about that, and I maybe went a little more, but I would say that was my personal choice. Could I have gotten by spending an hour of doing this work for yeah, absolutely. But I know who I am, and I know how I work, and I have to spend that time for me and my conscience to feel good about what I'm doing.
That human in the loop?
Yeah, I got to be the human in the loop. I have to be the one making those decisions.
Well,
so
that is wonderful. And as always, we are running out of time, but just being able to take that lesson plan and do with it what you did, and still, like we said, adding that human and that care and that empathy, and wanting to make sure those really great ideas really were executed the way they should be. And it's such an important topic. So that's great.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the biggest takeaway from this is not just the human in the loop, but it's my human in the loop. And what it comes down to is when we use AI in our classrooms to enhance what we know and what we do, that at the forefront, it's our students and the people who are in the audience, or the people who are actively participating in what we're doing, that they are in the loop. And so I did share with my students today the struggles that I went through and how I got to the lesson that was in front of them today. And I think that sharing and that honesty was important for my students to hear, and to realize that we as educators are not perfect, but we certainly care very much about the message that they hear.
And we are bridging those gaps that have been historically put out there, and we're doing it together and with AI. So thank you.
Thank you.